Ella Jackson, a young billionaire heiress in the industrial sector, invites Henry Wilson, the company receptionist, to pretend to be her partner and fiancé. Everyone was shocked when... Have you ever wondered how far a billionaire heiress would go to protect her family's legacy? And what could a simple receptionist have that's so special to earn her trust? Stay until the end to find out how one unexpected decision could change everything. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. Ella Jackson stood in the opulent boardroom, the walls adorned with rich mahogany and gold accents that spoke of generations of wealth and influence. A massive table stretched before her, polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting not only the grandeur of her family's legacy, but also the weight of expectation that sat heavily on her shoulders. At the far end of the room, a portrait of her father loomed, his stern expression seeming to judge her every move. He had built an empire from the ground up, and now it was her turn to uphold the family name. She took a deep breath, her heart racing as she adjusted the papers in front of her. The upcoming international conference was only hours away, and the pressure to impress the investors felt suffocating. Ella had spent countless nights preparing her speech, memorizing every statistic and projection, yet self-doubt clawed at her insides. What if she faltered? What if they saw through her facade as merely the heiress and not a capable leader? Focus, Ella, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible in the vast room. She stood, smoothing the front of her tailored blazer, and began to rehearse her opening lines. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. As the new head of Jackson Industries, I am thrilled to present our vision for the future. Her voice quivered slightly, and she paused, glancing once more at her father's portrait. Beneath the paint and varnish, she felt the weight of his expectations pressing down on her. Am I ready for this? She murmured, her eyes narrowing as she studied the features of the man who had been both her greatest inspiration and her most daunting critic. She closed her eyes, envisioning her father's encouraging smile, the way he had always believed in her potential. Yet, the image faded, replaced by the harsh reality of the moment. She was alone, and the thought sent a shiver down her spine. As if on cue, the door swung open and Henry Wilson, her loyal receptionist, stepped into the room. He was a stark contrast to the luxurious setting, dressed in a crisp white shirt and navy slacks that suited his unassuming demeanor. Ella, he called, concern lacing his voice as he approached her. Are you okay? She forced a smile, grateful for his presence. I'm fine, just going over my speech one last time, she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Henry studied her for a moment, his brow furrowing. You don't look fine. You look like you're about to face a firing squad. Ella chuckled softly, but the humor didn't quite reach her eyes. It feels like that sometimes. I just want to make my father proud. You will, he said firmly, stepping closer and placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're more than capable, Ella. You've worked hard for this. She appreciated his unwavering support, even if it felt like a flimsy lifebuoy in a stormy sea. What if they don't see that? What if they only see me as the heiress? Henry shook his head. You're not just an heiress, you're a Jackson. You have the vision and the drive to lead this company. Just remember, you're not alone in this. Ella felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Henry had always been there, the steady anchor in her chaotic life. Thank you, Henry. I don't know what I'd do without you. Just doing my job, he replied. But the warmth in his gaze suggested he meant more than that. There was an unspoken bond between them, forged through years of shared experiences. As he turned to leave, Ella felt a sense of urgency rise within her. Henry, wait, she called out, her heart racing. I need to talk to you about something important. He paused, turning back to face her, curiosity etched across his features. What's on your mind? Ella hesitated, weighing her options. I need your help with the conference. I've been thinking about how I can make a stronger impression on the investors, and I realized that I might need someone by my side. Someone who can lend me credibility. Henry raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you have in mind? I want you to pretend to be my fiancé and business partner, she said, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess herself. "If you're with me, it'll show the investors that I'm not just a lonely heiress but a serious businesswoman with support. It could make all the difference." For a moment, Henry stood in stunned silence, his expression a mix of surprise and uncertainty. "Ella, are you sure about this? I don't want to overstep any boundaries." "I'm sure," she insisted, her voice firm. "You're the only person I trust, and I can't do this alone. Besides, it's just a role to play, nothing more. But it could help me gain their respect, and it might even ease my nerves." He took a deep breath, contemplating her request. "You really think it'll work?" "I have to believe it will," she replied, desperation creeping into her tone. "Please, Henry, I need you." The weight of her plea hung in the air, and Henry could see the vulnerability in her eyes. He knew how much this conference meant to her. He had witnessed her struggles and triumphs from behind the reception desk. "Okay," he finally agreed, albeit hesitantly. "I'll do it. I'll be your fiancé and business partner." Relief flooded through Ella, her heart soaring with gratitude. "Thank you, Henry. You don't know how much this means to me. I'm just glad I could help," he said, a hint of a smile breaking through his initial hesitation. But beneath that smile, a flicker of something deeper danced in his eyes, a connection that neither of them had dared to acknowledge until now. As they stood there, the air thick with unspoken feelings, Ella realized that this arrangement was about more than just appearances. It was a step into unknown territory, a leap into a complicated web of emotions that had been quietly brewing beneath the surface. But for now, she pushed those thoughts aside. There were investors to impress and a legacy to uphold. With a determined nod, she gathered her notes, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They would navigate this together, and perhaps in the process, they would discover something unexpected, a connection that could alter the course of their lives forever. As the gala dinner unfolded beneath an opulent chandelier, its crystals glistening like stars, Ella Jackson and Henry Wilson made their entrance, drawing the attention of the room. Ella wore a gown that clung to her figure, the deep navy blue fabric contrasting beautifully with her fair skin. Her hair cascaded in soft waves, framing her face, but it was the resolute look in her eyes that truly captivated the crowd. Henry, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated his lean frame, stood at her side, projecting an air of confidence that belied the nervousness swirling within. "Just remember," Henry said softly as they moved further into the throng of elegantly dressed guests, "we're here to impress. Stick to the plan and we'll be fine." "I know," Ella replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on her shoulders, but with Henry beside her, it felt slightly more manageable. "Just act natural. We're a couple in love, right?" "Right?" He chuckled lightly, though his heart raced at the thought of pretending to be her fiancé. The chemistry they had shared over the past few days had evolved into something deeper, and the lines between their roles were beginning to blur. As they mingled, Ella introduced Henry to various investors and industry giants. "This is my fiancé, Henry Wilson," she said with a bright smile, her voice firm and confident. Each introduction felt like a small victory, but she could sense the scrutiny in their eyes, assessing both her and Henry's suitability. "Ah, the famous Ella Jackson," said a silver-haired man with an air of authority. "Your father would be proud. And you must be the lucky fiancé," he added, shaking Henry's hand vigorously. "What a wonderful partnership you two must share." Henry smiled, maintaining the facade with an ease that surprised even him. "We make a great team," he replied, glancing sideways at Ella, who was still processing the compliment. "Isn't that right, Ella?" the man pressed, his gaze shifting back to her. "Absolutely," she affirmed, her confidence surging as she spoke. "Henry has been invaluable in helping me navigate the complexities of the business. I couldn't have done this without him." As the evening wore on, the atmosphere warmed, and laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses. Ella and Henry found themselves at a table adorned with elegant centerpieces, where they engaged in animated discussions about the industry. They spoke passionately about innovations and trends, their chemistry undeniable. and it became evident to onlookers that their relationship was more than mere pretense. "Tell me, Henry," a sharp-eyed investor named Marjorie inquired, leaning forward with interest, "what's your vision for the future of Jackson Industries?" Henry felt a moment of panic, but he quickly composed himself. "I believe the focus should be on sustainable practices," he began, channeling his inner business strategist. "The world is evolving, and so must we. By investing in green technologies, we can ensure long-term growth and a positive legacy." Ella watched him, pride swelling in her chest. She had always known Henry was capable, but seeing him shine in this setting brought a smile to her lips. "Exactly," she added, "and we're committed to leading the charge in that direction. It's not just about profits, it's about responsibility." Their banter flowed seamlessly, and as they exchanged ideas, the attendees leaned in, captivated. This wasn't just a rehearsed act. There was a genuine connection that sparked in their exchanges. Their fingers brushed occasionally, each fleeting touch sending a jolt of electricity through them. Both were acutely aware of the growing tension, yet they kept their focus on the task at hand. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted, slicing through their bubble. Ella turned to see Reginald, a well-known rival investor, standing before them. His sharp features were accentuated by the flickering candlelight, and the smug smile on his lips sent a shiver down her spine. "Ella, my dear," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "I didn't expect to see you here, especially with your fiancé." He looked Henry up and down, his expression one of disdain. "How quaint." Ella felt a rush of indignation but forced a smile. "Reginald, it's always a pleasure," she replied, her voice laced with false warmth. "We're here to discuss the future of Jackson Industries, as I'm sure you're aware." "Oh, I'm always aware," he sneered, leaning in slightly. "But I wonder how well you'll fare when the stakes are high. You know, your family has had its fair share of setbacks. I hope you're not planning to repeat history." Henry stepped forward, his expression firm. "That's enough, Reginald. Ella is more than capable of proving herself, and we're not here to discuss the past. We're focused on the future." Reginald chuckled darkly, his demeanor unfazed. "Ah, the loyal assistant speaks. But tell me, Henry, are you truly prepared to handle the burden of this venture, or are you simply a pretty face in a suit?" Ella's heart raced as she watched their exchange. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable. "Henry is more than capable," she interjected, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We're partners, both in business and in life." Reginald raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing in his eyes. "Life? How charming. I do hope your little facade holds up when the pressure mounts. After all, I would hate to see you falter on stage tomorrow." With that, he turned on his heel, leaving a trail of unease behind him. Ella felt the weight of his words settle heavily upon her, a dark cloud of doubt hovering above her head. "Ella," Henry said gently, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts, "don't let him get to you. He's just trying to rattle you." "I know," she sighed, running a hand through her hair, a gesture of frustration. "But he's right about one thing. Tomorrow is crucial. If we don't impress, everything could fall apart." "Then we will impress," Henry reassured her, his gaze unwavering. "We have a plan, and we'll execute it flawlessly. Remember, we're in this together." She nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. As the evening progressed, they found a secluded balcony away from the crowd, the night air cool and refreshing. The distant sounds of laughter and clinking glasses faded into the background, leaving them in a bubble of their own. "Henry," Ella began, her voice softer now, "I couldn't have done this without you. Your confidence is contagious, and I couldn't have asked for a better partner," he replied, stepping closer. The chemistry that had been simmering between them intensified, the space between them charged with unspoken emotions. "Do you think we can really pull this off?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Absolutely," he said, his tone firm yet gentle. "But we need to stay focused. Tomorrow isn't just about impressing the investors. It's about you reclaiming your family's legacy." Ella looked away for a moment, contemplating the enormity of the task ahead. "I just wish it didn't feel so personal," she admitted. It's like I'm dragging my family's name through the mud every time I step into a room." Henry reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You're not dragging it, you're lifting it. You're here to show them what you're made of, and I believe in you." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the world around them faded into insignificance. Ella's pulse quickened as she felt the warmth of his hand enveloping hers. The intensity of their gaze spoke volumes, and for a heartbeat, she considered closing the distance between them. But just as quickly, she pulled back, reminding herself of the stakes at hand. "We should get back," she said softly, her heart still racing from the near connection. "We need to be ready for tomorrow, right?" Henry agreed, though the reluctance in his voice mirrored her own. As they made their way back into the gala, the atmosphere felt charged, as if their brief moment of intimacy had shifted something fundamental between them. The path forward was fraught with challenges, but it seemed the most significant challenge might just be navigating the feelings that had begun to blossom amidst the chaos. The sun rose over the city, casting golden rays that danced off the glassy facade of the hotel where Ella Jackson and Henry Wilson were staying. It was the day of the conference, and the air was thick with anticipation and anxiety. In their elegant hotel suite, Ella paced back and forth, her heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. She adjusted her hair in the mirror for the umpteenth time, her reflection revealing a mixture of determination and apprehension. "Ella, you're going to be great," Henry said, his voice steady and reassuring as he stood by the window, arms crossed, watching her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You've prepared for this. You know your stuff." I know, she replied, her voice laced with uncertainty. "But what if they don't take me seriously? What if they think I'm just a spoiled heiress who doesn't deserve to be here?" Henry stepped away from the window, moving closer to her. "You are not just an heiress. You are your father's legacy, and you've worked harder than anyone knows to prove that you belong in this world. You have the vision, the talent, and the passion. You just need to show them that." Ella stopped pacing and turned to face him, her green eyes searching his. "But what if Reginald tries to undermine me? He's been gunning for my family's reputation for years. I can't let him see me falter." "Then don't falter," Henry urged, his voice firm. "You have me by your side, and together, we'll tackle whatever he throws your way." The words resonated with her, and for a moment, Ella felt a rush of confidence. She had been leaning on Henry more than she realized, and his unwavering support was a lifeline. "I couldn't have done this without you, Henry. You've been my rock." He offered her a small smile, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "And I'll always be here. Just remember to breathe. You've got this." With a deep breath, Ella nodded and adjusted her blazer, straightening her shoulders. "You're right. Let's go over the pitch one more time." As they rehearsed, Ella outlined her vision for the company, her voice gaining strength with every word. Henry listened intently, throwing in supportive comments and questions that helped her refine her presentation. They worked seamlessly together, a well-oiled machine of ideas and strategy, their professional relationship deepening with every exchange. "Remember to make eye contact with the investors," Henry advised as they wrapped up. "Engage them. They need to see your passion, right?" Ella said, her heart racing at the thought of standing before a room full of powerful figures. "What if I mess up?" "Then you recover," he replied confidently. "You're quick on your feet. Just think of it as a conversation rather than a presentation." Ella took another deep breath, feeling a flicker of hope. "Okay, I'll try to remember that." As they prepared to leave, Ella caught Henry's eye. "Thank you for being here for me," she said, her voice softening. "I really appreciate it." "Always," he replied, his tone sincere. "Now let's go show them what you're made of." The conference hall was a grand space filled with sleek tables, bright lights, and an air of formality that made Ella's stomach flutter. Investors gathered, their voices a low hum of conversation, and Ella felt the weight of their gazes as she and Henry walked in together. Hand in hand, they approached the stage, where a large screen displayed the logo of Ella's family business. "Are you ready?" Henry asked, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. Ella nodded, her heart pounding as she stepped up to the podium. The room quieted, and she took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the faces before her. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Ella Jackson, and I am honored to present our vision for the future of Jackson Industries." As she spoke, Ella felt the energy in the room shift. She articulated her ideas with clarity and passion, her confidence growing with each passing moment. Investors leaned forward, engaged and interested. She glanced at Henry, who stood off to the side, his expression encouraging and proud. Then, as if on cue, Reginald stepped forward, a smug grin on his face. "Ella, while your enthusiasm is commendable, many of us here remember the struggles your family faced in the past. What makes you think you can succeed where others have failed?" Ella's heart sank at his interruption, but she quickly reminded herself of Henry's advice. "Reginald, it's natural for anyone to face challenges in business. What matters is how we adapt and grow from them. My vision is focused on innovation and collaboration, and I believe we can turn the tide." "Is that so?" he challenged, his tone dripping with skepticism. "But tell me, what qualifications do you have to lead such an important company?" For a moment, doubt threatened to overwhelm her. Ella faltered, her voice wavering as she struggled to find her footing. She could feel the eyes of the room on her, waiting for her to crack. But just as she began to lose her composure, Henry stepped forward, his presence a grounding force. "Reginald," Henry interjected smoothly, "with all due respect, Ella has been at the forefront of this company's recent strategies. She's demonstrated her capability through this project, and the results speak for themselves. Why don't we focus on the future rather than dwell on the past?" Ella's heart swelled with gratitude as she glanced at Henry. His support had shifted the room's energy, and she could see some investors nodding in agreement. Reginald's expression soured, frustration evident as he tried to regain control of the narrative. "Fine, but how do you plan to differentiate yourself from your competitors?" Reginald pressed, unwilling to let the matter drop. Ella inhaled deeply, drawing strength from Henry's presence. "With a focus on sustainable practices and community engagement. We're not just a business, we're a part of the community. Our success relies on the well-being of those we serve." The audience began to stir, intrigued by her vision. Ella could feel the tide turning, and with each passing moment, her confidence blossomed. She spoke with conviction, her words weaving a narrative that resonated deeply with the investors. "And let's not forget the importance of teamwork," she added, glancing at Henry. "As my business partner, he brings invaluable insights that will help us navigate this evolving landscape." The room buzzed with murmurs of approval, and Ella felt a spark of hope ignite within her. She was no longer just the heiress. She was a leader, and she was ready to claim her place. As she concluded her presentation, the applause echoed in her ears, warm and validating. Ella stepped away from the podium, her heart racing with adrenaline and relief. Henry rushed to her side, a wide grin on his face. "You did it, Ella. That was incredible," he exclaimed, his eyes shining with pride. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "You saved me back there, only because you allowed me to," he replied, his gaze steady. "You found your voice and you owned the room." Ella smiled, feeling a rush of gratitude and something deeper, a connection that sparked between them. But just as she began to bask in the moment, she caught sight of Reginald. His glare burned into her, a reminder that the battle was far from over. As the applause faded and the investors began to mingle, she knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger confrontation. "Let's stay alert," Henry said, sensing her unease. "I have a feeling Reginald won't let this go without a fight." Ella nodded, her heart racing at the thought of the challenges ahead. But with Henry at her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. They had each other, and together, they would navigate the treacherous waters of business and beyond. The atmosphere in the conference hall buzzed with a mixture of excitement and tension as Ella stepped away from the podium. The applause of investors still echoed in her ears, a symphony of hope that seemed to lift her spirit momentarily. Yet, as she glanced at her fellow investors, a shadow of doubt crept back into her heart. Despite the positive feedback, the weight of Reginald's earlier taunts loomed large in her mind, a thundercloud over her hard-won triumph. Henry, who had been standing off to the side, sensed the shift in her demeanor as she made her way through the crowd. He watched her, a mixture of admiration and concern etched on his face. The confidence she had exuded during the presentation flickered like a candle in the wind. He approached her, his voice steady and reassuring. "You did great up there, Ella. Really. They loved you." Ella forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I know, but it doesn't feel complete. There's still so much at stake." "Let's celebrate, then," he suggested, taking her by the elbow and leading her away from the throng of investors. "We'll grab a drink, just the two of us. You deserve it." They found a quiet corner of the hotel bar, away from the noise and the prying eyes. The ambience was warm, with soft lighting and plush seating that seemed to invite intimacy. Ella sank into a leather chair, her shoulders dropping as she let out a long breath. Henry ordered them drinks, a simple gin and tonic for her and a whiskey neat for himself. As he returned, he set the drinks on the table and leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Ella," he said, his tone dropping to a more serious note, "you need to give yourself credit. You stood up there and faced them, and you didn't back down, even when Reginald tried to undermine you." She wrapped her fingers around the cool glass, staring into the crystal-clear liquid as if it held the answers to her worries. "It's just, I can't shake off the feeling that this isn't over. Reginald will come for me. He won't let this go. Then we'll deal with him together," Henry replied, his voice firm. "You're not alone in this. You have me." Ella looked up, her gaze meeting his. The sincerity in his eyes was a balm to her frayed nerves. "I know, but I can't help but think about what he might uncover. My family's past, it's not perfect. There are things I've tried to keep hidden. Whatever it is, we'll face it head-on," he assured her, leaning back slightly, still holding her gaze. "You've already proven that you're stronger than you think. Let's celebrate tonight and then figure out a plan." She took a sip of her drink, the crispness of the gin refreshing her, if only a little. "You're right. I should focus on the success we had today, not the shadows looming over us." "Exactly," Henry said, a smile creeping onto his lips. "To success, then. To success," Ella echoed, clinking her glass against his. As the sound resonated in the quiet space, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. Their conversation flowed easily, the tension of the day melting away as they reminisced about their childhood dreams and aspirations. Henry shared stories of his own family, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability that made Ella's heart swell. She found herself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in days. The connection between them deepened, each shared story weaving a thread of intimacy that neither had anticipated. But the reprieve was short-lived. Just as Ella felt a sense of safety, the door swung open, and Reginald stepped into the bar, his presence a jarring contrast to the warmth that had enveloped them. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on Ella and Henry. A smug smile crept onto his lips as he approached their table, his posture radiating confidence. "Ella, my dear," he drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. "Celebrating, are we? How charming. I must say, I was surprised by your little performance today, but I fear it's not quite enough." Ella's heart sank, dread pooling in her stomach as she braced herself for his onslaught. "What do you want, Reginald?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Just a friendly chat," he said, leaning against the edge of their table, his eyes glinting with malice. "You see, I've been doing a bit of digging into the Jackson family affairs. There are some rather interesting things from the past that I think investors would find enlightening." Henry's jaw tightened, a protective instinct flaring within him as he shifted slightly closer to Ella. "You should leave, Reginald. We're not interested in your games," he said, his voice low and firm. "Oh, but you should be," Reginald countered, unfazed by Henry's warning. "You're right to be worried, Ella. I promise you, if I wanted to, I could unearth secrets that would not only ruin your reputation but also dismantle everything your father built. Just imagine what the investors would say if they learned the truth." Ella felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to let him see her fear. "You're bluffing. You have nothing on my family that could harm us," Is that so? Reginald leaned in closer, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. Perhaps I should enlighten you. You see, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Your family's foundation is riddled with cracks, and I'm the only one who holds the hammer. Before Ella could respond, Henry interjected, his voice sharp. You're just trying to intimidate her, Reginald. It won't work. She's stronger than you think. Reginald straightened, his expression darkening. Is that so? Perhaps you should take your own advice and watch your back, Henry. The higher you climb, the harder you fall, especially if you're standing on shaky ground. Ella could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. As Reginald's words hung over them like a dark cloud, she exchanged a glance with Henry, their unspoken bond solidifying in that moment. She knew they had to act, but fear clenched her heart. What secrets could Reginald reveal? What could he possibly know? Leave us, Reginald, Ella said, her voice stronger now. You won't intimidate me. I will protect my family's legacy, and I won't let you destroy it. Reginald chuckled, a cold, mirthless sound. We'll see about that, Ella. Just remember, I'm always watching, and the truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. With that, he turned on his heel and strode out of the bar, leaving a trail of unease in his wake. Ella felt her chest tighten, the lingering threat hanging in the air like a dark omen. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. What do we do now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Henry reached across the table, his hand covering hers. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this, Ella. We'll confront whatever he's hiding. Ella nodded, determination flooding her veins. I need to know what he knows about my family. There has to be a way to protect our legacy, to confront the past head-on before it destroys us. Then let's start digging, Henry suggested, his grip on her hand tightening. We'll uncover whatever secrets he thinks he has and take control of the narrative. As they sat in the dim light of the bar, the weight of the impending battle loomed over them. But in that moment, with their fingers intertwined, Ella felt a flicker of hope. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, unearthing truths and fighting for what mattered most, their future and the legacy of the Jackson family. Ella felt her heart race as she stood in the dimly lit hotel suite, staring at the family photo that had been tucked away in the corner of her father's old mahogany desk. The picture had been taken during a family gathering, her father's smile wide and genuine, but it was the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes that now haunted her. It was as if the very walls of the room were whispering secrets that had long been buried. She had always known that the family fortune came with its fair share of shadows, but what she had just stumbled upon in her father's old files was far darker than she had anticipated. Ella, Henry's voice broke through her thoughts. He stepped into the room, his brow furrowed with concern. You've been in there for a while. Is everything okay? She turned to him, clutching the document tightly in her hands. Henry, I found something. Something about my father's business dealings. Her voice trembled slightly, and she could see the concern deepen in his eyes. What do you mean? He asked, stepping closer. Taking a deep breath, she unfolded the paper, revealing a series of names, dates, and transactions that painted a troubling picture. There were investments, questionable ones that could have put everything at risk. If Reginald finds out about this, then we need to confront him together, Henry interrupted, his tone firm. You're not alone in this, Ella. We'll figure this out. Ella felt a swell of gratitude for Henry's unwavering support. He had been more than just a receptionist. He had become her confidant, her ally. I don't want to drag you into this, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Too late for that, he replied, a hint of a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. I'm already in. We're in this together. Ella nodded, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. Okay, then let's make a pact. We confront Reginald together. We'll face whatever comes our way. Agreed, Henry said, extending his pinky towards her. She laughed softly, a sound that felt foreign amidst the tension. She hooked her pinky around his, sealing their agreement with a playful gesture that made the gravity of the moment feel a little lighter. As they prepared to face Reginald, Ella couldn't shake the sense of impending doom. She had always been the good daughter, the dutiful heiress. But now she was stepping onto a battleground where nothing felt certain. What if he tries to twist the truth? What if he turns the investors against us? She asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. Reginald thrives on manipulation, but we have the truth on our side, Henry reassured her. And we have each other. Remember what we practiced for the presentation. Confidence can be our greatest weapon. With those words, Ella felt a surge of determination. They had both fought hard to get to this point, and she wouldn't let Reginald's schemes unravel everything they had built. Taking one last look at the picture of her father, she steeled herself, ready to confront the past and protect her future. The investor meeting was set to take place in the grand ballroom of the hotel. Ella and Henry entered together, their hands brushing against each other, a small gesture that spoke volumes about their bond. The room was filled with the buzz of conversation, investors mingling and exchanging pleasantries, but the air was thick with tension. Ella's heart raced as she spotted Reginald across the room, leaning casually against a marble pillar, a smirk playing on his lips as he spoke with a group of potential investors. She could feel the weight of his gaze, the predatory glint in his eyes. "There he is," she whispered to Henry, who nodded in understanding. "Let's do this," Henry said, taking her hand firmly in his, the warmth of his grip providing her with the strength she needed. As they approached, Ella's mind raced with the words she wanted to say. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head, but now, with Reginald looming before her, all her carefully crafted lines seemed to vanish. "Reginald," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We need to talk." He turned to face her, his expression shifting from amusement to mock surprise. "Ella, my dear, I was just telling these lovely investors about your unique approach to business." His tone dripped with sarcasm, and she could feel the tension in the room shift as the group focused on them. "Is that so?" she replied, refusing to back down. "I believe it's time we discussed your intentions regarding our investment proposal." Reginald smirked, crossing his arms. "My intentions? I'm simply looking out for the interests of the investors. After all, your family's reputation is hardly pristine. Is that what you're calling it?" Henry interjected, stepping forward with confidence. "You've been spreading rumors to undermine Ella's credibility. Why don't you come clean about your own dubious past?" Ella could see the surprise in Reginald's eyes, a flicker of anger flashing across his face. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he snapped. "I think I do," Ella countered, her voice gaining strength. "You're trying to sabotage our proposal because you know we're a threat to your plans. But today, we're not going to let you dictate the narrative any longer. What are you hoping to achieve, Ella?" Reginald chuckled, though his laughter held an edge of nervousness. "You think you can just waltz in here and turn the investors against me? They know who has the real power in this room. Maybe they're about to find out just how far you're willing to go to maintain that power," Henry said, his voice calm but unwavering. Ella took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the room's attention on her. "I have something to reveal, and I think it's time we set the record straight." As she spoke, she could see the investors' curiosity peaked. They leaned in, eager to hear what she had to say. "Reginald has a history of deceit, and I have the evidence to prove it," she continued, her voice rising above the murmurs. "But more importantly, I found something about my father's business dealings, and I'm ready to face what it means for my family and our future." The room went silent, the tension palpable as she allowed her words to sink in. "I won't stand here and let someone like Reginald tarnish my father's legacy with lies and manipulation. If you want to know the truth, I will share it. But I won't let my family's name be dragged through the mud any longer." Henry stood beside her, his presence a steady anchor. "Together, we're committed to transparency and integrity in our dealings. We're not just here to sell a proposal. We're here to build a future based on trust." Ella felt a wave of relief wash over her as she finished speaking. She had laid her cards on the table, and now it was up to the investors to decide where their loyalties lay. The murmurs began again, but this time they were filled with intrigue rather than skepticism. Reginald's facade cracked, a hint of panic evident in his eyes. "You think this is a game, Ella? You have no idea who you're dealing with," he hissed, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed his confidence. "We know exactly who we're dealing with," Henry replied, his voice steady. "And we're not afraid to expose the truth." Ella felt a spark of hope ignite within her. The tide was turning, and she could sense the investors rallying behind her. With Henry by her side, she finally felt ready to confront the shadows of her past and step into the light of her future. The tension in the air was almost palpable as Ella stood in front of the investors, her heart racing at the unexpected turn of events. Reginald, with a triumphant smirk plastered across his face, held up a weathered ledger, its pages yellowed with age. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice dripping with mockery, "I believe this document will shed light on the true nature of the Jackson family's fortune. It seems that your beloved heiress has some explaining to do." Ella's stomach dropped. She felt the weight of the world crashing down on her shoulders. The ledger could be the end of everything she had worked for, everything her father had built. "Henry," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath, "what do we do?" Henry stepped forward, his presence a steadying force beside her. He had always been her rock, but now, as they faced this insurmountable challenge together, he transformed into something more, a partner in every sense of the word. "Ella," he said firmly, "we have to stay calm. Let's not react out of fear. There must be a way to turn this around." Reginald continued to gloat, flipping through the ledger with exaggerated flair. This ledger details transactions that could easily be classified as illegal activities. "Your father, Ella, was involved in some rather dubious dealings. How do you intend to explain this to your investors?" The room buzzed with whispers, the tension thickening with every passing second. Ella could feel the eyes of the investors boring into her, seeking doubt, searching for weakness. "I need to see it," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Show me what you have." Reginald raised an eyebrow, surprised by her defiance. "Oh, but why would I do that? It's much more entertaining to watch you squirm." But Henry, with an unwavering resolve, took a step closer to Ella. "We can't let him win. We need to expose his lies," he said, his voice low but fierce. "Ella, I believe in you. We can take this back." Ella took a deep breath, her mind racing. "If we're going to do this, we need to find out what's really in that ledger and how it connects to my family," she said, determination igniting within her. "Henry, can you get access to the records? We need to gather evidence to counter Reginald's claims." "I'll do it," he replied without hesitation, his eyes filled with confidence. "You focus on keeping the investors engaged." As Henry moved to gather the necessary information, Ella turned her attention back to the room, which had grown eerily silent. She felt the weight of the moment, the eyes of the investors now fixated on her, waiting for her response. "Reginald," she said, her voice resonating with authority, "I won't let you manipulate the truth. You may have that ledger, but it doesn't define who my family is. My father built this company with integrity and hard work, and I refuse to let you tarnish that legacy." Reginald scoffed. "Integrity? Is that what you call it? The truth will come out, Ella, and when it does, you'll be left with nothing." The investors murmured, some nodding in agreement with Reginald, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ella felt her heart race. She needed to turn this narrative around. "I will address those claims, and I will do so with the truth," she declared, her voice growing stronger. "In the meantime, I ask for your patience." Just then, Henry returned, a stack of papers in hand. "I found something," he said, urgency in his tone. "There's a discrepancy in Reginald's claims. He's been manipulating the records to suit his agenda." Ella's heart raced at the revelation. "You mean he's lying?" Henry nodded, flipping through the documents. "These papers show evidence of his tampering. If we present this to the investors, it will expose his deceit." With a renewed sense of purpose, Ella faced the room once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that trust is paramount in our business. I have always strived to uphold that trust, and I ask for your understanding as we navigate these challenges together." Reginald's face darkened, and Ella could see the panic flickering in his eyes. "You think you can turn this around? You're just a child playing at business, Ella." "Enough," Henry interjected, his voice cutting through the tension. Ella is not just a child. She is a capable businesswoman who has proven herself time and again. And I can assure you, Reginald, your days of manipulation are over. Ella could feel the shift in the room. The investors were now leaning in, curiosity piqued. With a nod from Henry, she continued, I will present the evidence of Reginald's manipulations. I will not stand by while he uses fear and deceit to try and undermine my family's legacy. As Ella began to lay out her case, the investors listened intently. She spoke with passion, weaving a narrative that highlighted her family's contributions and resilience, countering Reginald's claims with facts and evidence. The more she spoke, the more she could feel the tide turning in her favor. Reginald, realizing his grip was slipping, tried to interject. This is absurd. You're grasping at straws, Ella. But the investors were no longer swayed by his bluster. With the evidence Henry had uncovered, they began to see Reginald for what he truly was, a man desperate to protect his own interests at the expense of others. Finally, the moment came when Ella laid the last piece of evidence on the table. And here, she said, holding up the document that proved Reginald's deception, is the proof of your fraudulent activities. It's time for you to answer for your actions. The room erupted in murmurs, and Reginald's face turned a shade of crimson. You can't do this, he shouted. But the investors were no longer listening to him. One of the senior investors stood up, a look of determination on his face. Reginald, your actions have not only put this company at risk, but have also endangered the trust we have in our partnerships. We cannot allow this to continue. With that, the tide fully turned. Reginald, realizing he was cornered, muttered a string of curses before storming out of the room, his reputation in tatters. The investors began to applaud Ella, their confidence in her restored. As the claps echoed in the boardroom, Ella felt a rush of relief wash over her. It was over. Reginald was defeated, and her family's name was safe. She turned to Henry, who stood proudly beside her, a smile breaking across his face. You did it, Ella, he said, his voice filled with admiration. You faced him head-on and you won. Tears of relief sprang to Ella's eyes as she stepped closer to Henry. I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Henry reached for her hand, the warmth of his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her. We did this together. You're more than just an heiress, Ella. You're a leader. In that moment, everything shifted. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, and as they stood there, hand in hand, the world around them faded away. Ella looked into Henry's eyes, and all the fears, doubts, and anxieties melted away, replaced by something deeper, a bond forged through adversity. Henry, she whispered, her heart racing, I think I'm falling for you. His expression softened, and he leaned in closer. I felt the same way for a long time, Ella. And then, as if the world had paused just for them, they closed the distance. Their lips met in a kiss that ignited the spark that had been brewing between them, a kiss that held the promise of a future filled with love and partnership. As they pulled away, breathless, Ella realized that this was just the beginning. Together, they could face anything. Hand in hand, they were ready to embrace the future, knowing that love and truth were the foundations upon which they would build their lives.